You might remember us, the ones in the red shirts.
We can't afford guns being the leading cause of death for children and teens in this country.
Whether you're Republicans or Democrats, you can't look away.
We're not going to shut up until we get the change we deserve.
Thoughts and prayers are no longer enough. We need to take action now.
You didn't get this far by saying you can't. You didn't get this far by just being mediocre. You moms demand action, and that's what we demand.
Welcome to Movement Builders, a show about the people ending gun violence in America, all of us.
I'm Kaylin Ford.
And I'm Nikita McDaniel. Y'all, today's episode is something special. We have two amazing guests who are here to tell us more about a brand new program from the Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund called Train Smart. It builds on the legacy of Be Smart, and it's all about giving new and seasoned gun owners alike the quality training that they need to safely use and store their guns. And it's created with military veterans and taught by experienced trainers. And we're going to talk to two people involved in the program today.
That's right, Nikita. For years, we've advocated for the policies that require people to undergo safety training when they buy a gun or get a permit. But what we learned from doing this work in states across the country is that not all gun safety training is created equally. Some spread fear and misinformation, and some just don't feel like safe or welcoming places for gun owners of color, women gun owners, or LGBTQ plus folks. So members of Everytown's Veteran Advisory Council worked with our staff to create a gun safety training program that's truly for all of us.
And that's what Train Smart is all about, Kaylin. It's a first-of-its-kind program that offers in-person and virtual training about everything from buying a gun to safely storing and operating it. The courses are created with veterans who know firsthand the immense responsibility that comes with owning and handling guns. And this training is very relevant right now because studies show that self-defense and protection are the leading reasons that people purchase firearms. But those gun buyers are also the least likely to receive training. And with guns actually being the leading cause of death for kids and teens in our country, teaching gun owners how to keep themselves and their loved ones safe has never been more important. So, we are so honored to have two folks with us today to talk about their work with Train Smart, Bianka Martinez and Chris Marvin. Bianka is the National Program Coordinator for Hunters of Color, where she works to expand access, safety, and belonging in the outdoors for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. She's based in Colorado, where she is a hunter education instructor and a proud gun owner who is always focused on safety. And she's passionate about helping folks connect or reconnect to the land in a radical, joyful act.
And we're honored to have with us Chris Marvin, a former Army Black Hawk helicopter pilot and combat wounded veteran of the war in Afghanistan. Chris is a fourth-generation Army combat veteran whose family's military history can be traced all the way back to the American Revolution. He is now the principal for Marvin Strategies, a consulting firm that focuses on the veteran narrative and bringing veterans' voices to progressive social causes. As a consultant, Chris serves as the veteran lead for the Everytown for Gun Safety Support Fund, and he's based in Hawaii. Welcome, Chris and Bianka, to the Movement Builders podcast.
Hi, thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I could barely wait for this day. I'm so stoked to hear more about the work of Train Smart. But first, tell us a little bit more about what brought you both to this movement. Bianka, you can go first.
I grew up in Chicago, not a suburb, not like the greater Chicagoland area. I grew up in the city. And everybody's like, what about the violence? What about the gun violence? What about all the gang activity? And one, people say that a lot, but Chicago's a beautiful place to grow up. I wouldn't have wanted to grow up anywhere else. It's one of the most diverse places I've ever lived. There's so much culture, art, and food. But also, there's not a lot of opportunities for the average person to get educated or experienced with safe firearm use and ownership. And I was raised by a single mother. She was in law enforcement. And I think that level of training and proficiency and safety and considerations and the way that she introduced me to firearms from a very young age from her telling me like, hey, this is in the house. It's locked up. You're never to touch it. You should never see it. It's only going to come out when I take it out to go to work and when I put it back. And then eventually I expressed interest in being like, one day I want to see what it's like to fire a gun. And I got old enough and I did that with her. That was like our mother-daughter bonding time, was going to the range. And it did get to a point where I was like, okay, I'm not seeing anybody who looks like myself or my mom at the range. Is this right for me? But she was so adamant in saying, like, if this is something you enjoy doing, I will always make sure you find an avenue, feel safe to do it.
Wow.
And I think because that was my introduction to firearms, that even when I heard about or saw or had first, second, or third case anecdotes about gun violence, gun misuse, I knew that that was something I didn't want to be involved in. I knew that it was, a misappropriation of a tool. And now that I'm older and that I enjoy hunting and enjoy recreational shooting, I think my experiences in firearm use and ownership, and also the fact that I tell people, like, I'm not a veteran. I'm just a girl who really wants people to find safe avenues to demystify firearms and to remove that fear that's being held over them. And finding avenues to do that is really important. Otherwise, you are going to continue being afraid of guns, as you should be. Like, they're scary things, but there's ways to introduce them that, maybe you never want to own one, but now you're comfortable being around them or having those conversations. So I think that's really what did it for me, is that I got really lucky with the ability to have that specific introduction to firearms.
That's amazing.
What about you, Chris?
Well, I got to say, I feel a bit of a kinship with Bianca already. I'm also from Illinois, but not Chicago. I root for all the Chicago sports teams. I'm from central Illinois, right? I grew up downstate. Probably would have had much more of an opportunity to be around firearms than you might have in the city, but really wasn't. I'm the son of a veteran, and he's the son of a veteran. He's the son of a veteran, but we didn't have a gun in the house. Those were used for military purposes only. I didn't really hunt, but I was an Eagle Scout growing up and got rifle merit badge and all that stuff. But when I joined the military is when my first real experience with firearms occurred. And that is, for me, the best type of training you can get around guns, right? The military really focuses on three core pillars when they're talking about guns, and it's training, safety, and accountability. Mm-hmm. And I think that, as a veteran, and I know many veterans who feel the same way, we look at civilian gun laws and civilian gun culture, and we're kind of like, where's the training, safety, and accountability? Where's all the stuff that I learned inside the nation's profession of arms that aren't translated to the way that civilians and lawmakers often treat and talk about firearms? And so, I've been lucky to be consulting for Everytown as a veteran lead for the past 8 years, and leading Everytown's fantastic Veteran Advisory Council, which has veterans from across the country advocating for gun violence prevention. And when this opportunity came up sort of through iterative conversations and development, that like, hey, maybe Everytown should think about actually getting into gun safety training. After all, it is Everytown for gun safety, right?
Right.
I jumped at the opportunity to be a part of that and to make veterans a part of that, to take that gun culture that we have in the military, that respect that we have for firearms, and as Bianca put it, that justified fear of a machine that can instantaneously take human life, right? Everybody who uses one for any purpose should have that fear that drives respect, or that respect that is driven by fear slightly, but also not be afraid of the guns, right? Because when you just have fears, you have so many people who think, man, I might need a gun for whatever personal reason they have, be it hunting or recreation or even self-defense, but they're afraid enough of it that they're not getting the right training. They're afraid enough that they don't familiarize themselves appropriately. And I'll tell you, one thing we do in the military is we familiarize the heck out of guns. In fact, you don't touch a loaded gun for weeks in the military until you've spent hours and hours learning every part of it, learning how to take it apart and clean it and put it back together. And you use blank adapters, you use dummy rounds, you use all these things. And then one day, weeks later, the drill sergeant's like, okay, you guys can have a couple rounds, but that's at the range, right? That's at the range, and that's in a safe environment under the control of people. And so if we can take any of these things from military background and put them into gun safety training, I'm excited about that. And that's why I'm here today.
Thank you both.
Chris, that's amazing. And both of you really talking about that legacy of safety training and accountability that you learned both at home and in the military. It's just such a juxtaposition, as Chris said, with what we see in some states where you don't even have to pass a background check. You don't even have to wait before you purchase a firearm, right? And so that juxtaposition is so stark when you're telling us about the systematic way that both of you were introduced to these weapons and to respect and understand them before you ever handled them. This training is so needed. So we're so excited to talk to you more about it today. The next question is also for you, Bianka. You talked a little bit about this going to the range with your mom, but as a woman of gun owner and a gun owner of color, how did that sort of motivate you to work with Train Smart and do it better than it's been done in the past?
Like I said before, I don't consider myself a firearms expert. I barely consider myself a firearms enthusiast. I've always enjoyed shooting. It's a pastime that for me, it's a weird thing to say, bear with me, but when I'm stressed, when I'm overworked, when I'm really like going through it, angry, sad, like anything, I go to the gun range. And it's not like one of those like, oh, I got to take out my anger. But for me, it's really a moment of zen. I'm focused on my breathing, my posture, how my back feels, you know, what my arms feel like. And I'm very connected to that weapon that I'm about to discharge. And everything just sort of falls into place. I don't have the attention span personally to be able to meditate. Like, I'm very much a busybody. But the fact that when I'm behind a firearm, everything just kind of like connects. And I don't know if other people have that same experience. I always talk about it when I'm introducing people to firearms or I'm at the range. But that zen, that level of connection, that level of like everything slows down, it really helps me. And I think going from living in Chicago, shooting at ranges outside of Chicagoland, to then moving around different spots in the Midwest and then eventually moving out west, I realized that it's an active process to be able to feel comfortable doing that, especially at outdoor ranges, public ranges, private ranges. And I think now that I live in a very white community, I live in rural Colorado, there's nobody at my range who looks like me, whether it's my private ranges, my public land ranges, whether I go to Denver or Colorado Springs. And so I think for me, I was always very aware of that. I walk into a gun store. My first experience at one of the firearm stores here where I live, somebody was like, oh, well, if you want to buy a handgun, you have to be a resident and you can like register your little Subaru for Colorado and you'll be a resident. And I was like, okay, well, first of all, this isn't my first firearm purchase. I drive a lifted pickup truck. Like you made so many assumptions that for some reason, like that's the first thing you chose to say to me as somebody who's probably on commission. I'm going to go talk to that person over there. And I offer, like, if you want to go to the range, I will go with you because I know what it's like to navigate those conversations in this body. If you're a woman, they're going to try to sell you the smallest, pinkest thing. I have very large hands. I really only shoot like compact or full-size handguns. Subcompacts don't work for me. They're so small. Like, I know what they're going to do, and it's not necessarily the best thing for you. Like, they're not approaching you as a customer. They're seeing like a woman just walked into my store. I'm going to put these assumptions on her. Or they're saying a brown person walked into my store. I'm going to put these assumptions on them. And whether it's conscious or not, it's happening. So you have to not only know how to deflect from those conversations and really advocate yourself, which for me, who has been shooting since I was like 15, 16, it's hard. I'm in my 30s. Imagine somebody who grew up their whole life not only not shooting, but then afraid of firearms, and then you're trying to enter this space, and there's barrier after barrier after barrier, and then you just get pushed back, and you're even further back than when you started, because you're like, dang, like, this really isn't for me. I tried, and it isn't for me.
Right.
So I think being very aware of like the privilege I've had in having the experience to navigate these spaces and conversations, let me do that for you. I know what that's like.
Well, I have to tell you, Bianka, you are a very rooted, inspirational person. And I know you changed so many lives by people that you shared this with before. And I'm very excited to have you be a part of this program. You did something to me, girl. You did something to me. So thank you for everything you're doing. Chris, veterans are also such an important part of our movement. And we're really so grateful for your leadership. When you said you were here for 8 years, I was like, that's right, because I've been here for 9 and I met you right after I started working. We've been working together ever since. So thank you not only for the work that you do with Train Smart, but you're also a part of our Veterans Advisory Council as well. So just tell me a little bit about how you've brought your skills and your perspective as a veteran to actually creating Train Smart.
I think that what Bianka was talking about is actually really apropos of why Train Smart exists and why it is being created around the same principles that exist in military firearms training. And I'll explain why, because look, for whatever reason, and I'm not here to tell you what the reason is, a lot of gun ranges, a lot of gun shops, as Bianca has just described very aptly, that they're full of white men, right? And you might think that those are the only people who, are permitted to own guns, right? Or be in the hunting culture or all those types of things. And Bianca, of course, proves that that's not true. Plenty of people from all types of different backgrounds and genders and geographies and everything would like to find ways to meditate at a gun range the way that Bianca does. And I think that for us at Everytown for gun safety, if you're thinking about the folks who meditate at a gun range, you can have an entirely different perspective on what gun culture looks like, right? Because a lot of times we're talking about folks who, like you described before, can walk into a gun show and buy a gun and then concealed carry it on their first day with no training, no background check, no anything else. And so we do think about those folks, but when you think about the folks that are doing it right, we owe them something too. Now, back to the sort of race and gender thing, I tell you one place where there is not a racial disparity on the gun range, and that's in the military, right? Because people who join the military come from every background that you see in the United States. Actually, black people in the military are overrepresented slightly, and people come from all over the country too, urban and rural. North, south, east, west. There's way more men in the military than there are women, but there are also plenty of women in the military. And so when you get to that military gun range, you see a mix of America, and you see them all learning how to treat guns with respect and how to utilize them properly. A lot of times we talk about in the military, the reason that we take that approach is because of the reason that we use guns, the reason we have them in the first place. And that is first and foremost to either protect or take human life, right? Either I'm protecting the people that I'm with, or I am shooting to kill the enemy. And then let's just be very blunt about it. That is something that the military is designed to do, at least trained to do. And folks who do it don't find it fun, but many times they are part of a mission where that is a necessary part of it. Because that's what we're training for, we actually look at guns as tools. And I think hunters might kind of feel the same way. That weapon is a tool, right? And it's a tool to get the job done. And if you can get the job done with another tool, maybe you do. But in the military, all of those different firearms we learn are just tools of our trade. And we treat them like that. And so when we talk about bringing those military principles of training, safety, and accountability to the civilian gun culture, it's really actually like a kind of a counter narrative. Because one of the reasons that Train Smart is necessary is because so much of that training, safety, and accountability does not exist in current training courses. I took a concealed carry course. I now have a concealed carry permit that is useful in 37 states.
Wow.
Man, when I took that course, it was fear-based. They skipped over the secure storage aspect of owning a firearm. We only touched guns on the firing line, and they were preloaded and set at the firing line. You picked them up, you shot 10 times, you set them down. Wow. Nobody ever told you how to clear a weapon, how to put a magazine in and out. They just nothing. They basically spent 6 hours in the classroom teaching us how to get away with shooting somebody if you need to, and how to buy the insurance that in case you shoot somebody, you need to have the insurance that'll protect you from litigation. And so for me, that was so disheartening because it was so counter to what I had learned in the military. You're going to carry everywhere you are because you never know when you're going to come across somebody who wants to do you harm. And honestly, I took this with about 20 other veterans, and we just rolled our eyes over and over and over until we get to the point where all of us veterans say, you know what we'd like to help with? We'd like to help with Everytown creating a course that is better, that teaches folks the right way, that mimics what we learned in the military and brings it to the civilian community, because if we don't do it, who else will? And we just want people to do what they want with their guns as long as they're doing it safely, whether it's meditate at the range, whether it's hunting, whether it's having it in your home secured and safely stored for self-defense. Like, plenty of reasons. We'll go through all those reasons in Train Smart, and we'll help people understand that these are tools when you treat your tools properly. And that's what we learned in the military. So we just want to share that.
Sign me up.
Thank you, Chris.
We're recruiting instructors. So if you want, you can join Bianca and become a Train Smart
instructor. I'm not ready yet for that part. Can I make a special request for Bianca to be my instructor?
It's done. It's done. We can set it up. I just want to piggyback off of what you were saying, Chris, because I've taken different courses in different states because I've moved a lot. I've taken hunter education more than once because I was bad about keeping proof of hunter ed. I've taken conceal and carry classes more than once. And my most recent conceal and carry class, I took it here in Colorado. And while I will consider it, I think, one of the most well done courses I've ever been in, it was run by a woman of color and a medically discharged veteran. They did a great job teaching the course, but the demographic of people taking the course is what you'd expect: young white men and women, as well as some like middle-aged older white men and women. I think I might have been one of the only people of color there. And when you take a conceal and carry course, they run you through different scenarios and they're like, what would you have done here? Is this an appropriate time to draw? Is this an appropriate use of a firearm? Is this, is your life in danger? I, a Black woman, a queer Black and Mexican woman who grew up in Chicago, my best skill, I taught high schoolers, I've taught kids who are in and out of juvie on probation. I could de-escalate like nobody's business. I am one of the best de-escalators of any situation. But the thing that kills me is in every one of those scenarios, every single time somebody else across the room was like, that's dangerous. Like, you need to draw right now because they're walking at you. I was like, you could put chairs in between you. You can put tables in between you. You can retreat, walk out. Like, there is no point at which I personally would have drawn my weapon and pointed it at this person in a restaurant, in a cafe, in a public setting, because there are multiple bystanders who could step in. There are multiple things you can put in between you and the next person. And I'm like, me personally, I'm walking away. Like, I'm leaving. I'm running away. I was like, because I don't get the benefit of the doubt for saving my own life. I'm a very large woman. I am 5'9" in platforms. I weigh 200 and something pounds. A cop sees that I have my weapon drawn in a situation where violence has escalated. I'm getting 3 warning shots to the neck. Like, let's be so serious. I do not get the benefit of the doubt. I don't get that. And the fact that every single person around me was like, they didn't even make an attempt to de-escalate. They're like, I'm waiting. And now's the moment where I get to draw my gun. I was like, can we all please collectively touch grass? And to Chris's point, they're going to pass that conceal and carry class. They already have the privilege of buying a weapon, and they're going to buy a gun, buy a way to conceal it, and conceal it every day without practicing at the range, without firing continuously to get proficiency with it. They're just going to be like, I am going to keep myself safe no matter the situation. I have the ability to push somebody back, to bully them, to stand up for myself.
Bianka, that truth, thank you for sharing that truth with us. And it's like that old saying, when you're holding a hammer, all of a sudden everything looks like a nail. So we got people walking around holding these weapons, thinking that every situation, whether it's an argument over a parking spot or somebody walking down the street at night that they don't like the look of, even if they're doing nothing at all of a sudden is an opportunity to use a weapon. And that's why we have the highest gun homicide rate of any developed country in the world. Let's be real.
And I think it's instructive that one of the very first sort of entry-level courses that TrainSmart's going to have is, should I buy a gun, right? So we're going to meet people where they are. If you're sitting at home and for, again, whatever reason, I want to get into sports shooting, I'd like to learn how to be a hunter, I believe that I have need to protect myself or my family, and I think I should buy a gun, should I? Should I buy one? Do I really need one? Because maybe you take that course and then you learn the answer was, no, I should buy a dog. Because that is way more useful for that middle of the night burglary attempt or whatever you think is going to happen. And statistically, the dog is going to save your family's life a lot quicker than the gun actually will. Especially if you haven't trained on it. By the way, as Bianca points out, people just going out, getting their permits, buying their guns, and then shoving them in the nightstand drawer. It's like, well, if you don't know how to use it, what's the point of even being there? So all of this leads to why the principles that underlie TrainSmart, again, based on military service, based on what veterans know, using instructors who are experienced hunters, who are using guns for the right reasons, who treat them with the respect they deserve. That's why this is going to be on point for so many Americans who aren't normally seen in gun culture. And we're going to help them to exhibit a gun culture that we feel is safe, right? And it is, again, Everytown for gun safety. We're going to live up to that mantra.
Thank you, Chris. And I just want to point out that if a soldier who is under an extreme amount of stress, right, can wait and can think about all the ways to not shoot a gun, then surely somebody walking through the parking lot of a Walmart can do that too, right? This should be kind of 101. Chris, you talked a little bit about what some of the courses are going to cover. There's 3 courses that we have right now: the Smart Guide to Buying a Gun, which you talked a little bit about, the Smart Guide to Owning a Gun, and TrainSmart Gun Safety and Marksmanship. Tell us a little bit about what each of those courses cover and what can folks expect when they take those courses?
So I am going to be teaching 2 courses. The first one is the Smart Guide to Buying a Gun. This is the shorter course. Both of them are designed to be done online. The Smart Guide to Buying a Gun is about an hour long, and it's designed for people who are thinking about buying a gun and have done some research on YouTube or tried to find other things. But you can only YouTube so much without having those conversations, without learning from a subject matter expert, so to say. So it talks about different things like gun safety rules. It may get into gun safety rules into the particular state where you live or the particular region, because the gun safety rules in Chicago and gun laws in Chicago are way different than the ones here in rural Colorado where I live. It talks about how to store them securely. And I think most importantly, what you're going to want to look for in terms of purchasing a gun, if that is the decision that you are going to make. Because like Chris said, buying a dog is a way easier way to keep your family safe than buying a gun. You shouldn't buy a gun just because you're scared. You should buy a gun because you're going to be practicing with it or using it to hunt or doing clay shooting. It also gives students the ability to ask those questions that you might not necessarily be able to answer from somebody who's trying to sell you a gun. The person trying to sell you a firearm has one goal and one goal only, and it is to make sure that they make that sale, that they get that commission, that they turn you into a customer. I have zero stake in whether or not someone buys a firearm. If somebody takes my course and decides they don't want a firearm, that means I did my job. I'm not trying to convince you to buy a firearm. I want you to understand them, and I want you to not be as afraid of them as a lot of people are, because there is an intimidation factor. I want you to be able to protect your home without even thinking of your gun. I want to make sure that if you do have to go get your firearm, you have to unlock it. And it also talks about the importance of training. Before I go out and hunt at the end of the year, I don't only take my gun out to hunt. I'm shooting all year round. And eventually I get to a point where I think I've done this enough times, I feel prepared to go out and ethically take the life of an animal. So practice and training are very important. Training is also more than just being at the range. It's how do I put my firearm in my car? How do I take it back out? How do I leave it safely in front of me when I'm not actively shooting it? Am I aware of the people around me when I'm at the range? Are they being safe? And that's only the 1 hour course. So now we talk about the 2 hour course, which is the Smart Guide to Owning a Gun. And it talks about some of these first things as well. But this course specifically is designed for people who may already own a gun and haven't yet really done any training. And you want to learn from an expert instead of necessarily watching YouTube or trying to get those answers. So again, it's going to refocus on gun safety. It's going to refocus on those rules and how to securely store and transport your firearm. And it's going to teach you how to be safe with state as well as federal gun laws. And it's going to talk about some of those permitting purchase requirements. It's going to talk about a lot of statistical data about what goes into owning a gun. What do those safety things look like? What do the numbers of gun violence look like?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're trying to emphasize with this course is we're going to show people the factual statistical data. You're not allowed to necessarily have an argument when you have hard data. Some things are just facts. And those are not just numbers that you're looking at. They're not just statistics about gun violence. Those are people's lives that have been impacted, changed, or ended. And I, as a firearm owner, think about that every single day. And if you, as a firearm owner, are not taking these statistics, these lives into consideration, you are doing a disservice to everyone who's been impacted by gun violence and everybody who's working to change that. It's really going in depth of what does it mean to be a firearm owner and how can we create ethical and safe firearm owners and actively work to change those statistics and make sure that year by year, less people are losing their lives or living with lifelong trauma, wounds, mental health damages as a result of gun violence and unethical gun ownership. There is also a third course, which is the Train Smart Guide to Gun Safety and Marksmanship. That's about an 8-hour course that gets broken into several modules. But I personally will not be teaching that course because that course is priority taught by veterans, law enforcement officials, people who've had firearm experience as part of their profession.
Wow, we are really ebbing and flowing in this conversation, and I'm learning so much. This next question is actually for both of you. And we touched on this a little bit. We know that the decision about whether to own a gun, it's a deeply personal one, right? And we know that some folks in our movement might wonder if Train Smart is encouraging more people to go out and buy guns. So tell us more about how this training is promoting responsible gun ownership, no matter what.
Yeah, I look, is it possible that someone is going to go out and buy a gun after they take the Train Smart course because of what they learned in the Train Smart course? I mean, yes, for sure. We're trying to get to people at that point, and we're actually trying to meet people where they are. I would much rather have the new gun owner have taken that Train Smart course than not. And as we mentioned, Train Smart is truly aimed at the folks who are somewhat not included or disenfranchised from the current gun culture. I think the worst thing that can happen is to have someone who's maybe not completely comfortable with firearms, but they end up purchasing a firearm. And because they're also not comfortable sitting in a classroom full of the prevalent personality and demographics of gun culture, right? The white men, the older white men, the bros, that their machismo comes from their sidearm. Well, we attract a different type of person, and that person can be a gun owner. We want a lot of gun owners working in gun violence prevention and working with Moms Demand Action in Everytown, and we welcome them here. I think the other part of this, however, that we always need to remember, the real difference in Train Smart, and Bianka brought this up, she talks about every time she goes into a gun shop, that guy's working on commission. We are not incentivized at Train Smart by whether or not you buy a gun or not, right? We are the people who are here exclusively for the safety and for what I think for the right reasons. And so I think for that reason, again, it's meeting people where they are and giving them the tools they need to make decisions for themselves.
And Chris, I want to piggyback off of what you said. Not only are the safety courses in person that somebody might take that are done by gun stores, incentivizing people to buy guns, or there's a vested interest, right, in selling someone something. But we see a lot of people turn to YouTube for everything from help making IKEA furniture to how to do this recipe to how to use a gun. And a lot of those gun tubers are also receiving money from gun companies for promoting that. And so it's really important, I think, that Train Smart is in this space, truly meeting people where they are and doing this without that incentive to sell someone something. Because if I'm going to bring an object like a gun into my home, I have little kids. If I'm going to make that decision, I want someone to tell it to me straight. I want someone who's going to tell me what I need to do to be safe, who's not looking to make a profit off of what decision I make. So this is so needed, and I'm so excited for that reason. Bianka, is there anything you wanted to add?
I think Chris summed it up perfectly. If I was to run one of my courses right now, or if I was to have an impromptu conversation with both you, Kaylin, and you, Nikita, and one of you went and purchased a firearm and one of you decided I'm either never going to purchase a firearm or I'm going to wait a year, that means I've still done my job because I've exposed you to a different flavor of what a firearm owner looks like. Everything that I was taught to give and disseminate to people who take these courses is still the same thing that I talk about when people ask me about firearm ownership personally. I'm going to ask you, why do you want it? I'm going to ask you, how do you feel? I'm going to ask you, do you live by yourself? Do you have kids coming in and out of your house? How are you going to keep it safe? Are you just going to go out, buy one? These are still the same conversations I'm having on my personal time. And so I think even exposure to somebody who isn't just like a gun nut who just wants to shoot everything, like I want that to happen. I want people to understand that there are firearm owners who are taking firearm safety, not only personally, but to the community level, in policy, everything. That needs to shift. I want more firearm owners to take over what our community looks like. And if I've exposed you to that, I've still done my job, regardless of whether you decide to never buy a firearm or if you go out and buy a firearm the next week. You know that you have options and what this community, this pastime, this hobby, this sport looks like. I want you to know that you're going to have to be a safe person. And there's a broad spectrum of firearm ownership. You know what one side is. You've been exposed to it. That's culturally what we have in this country. I want you to take a look at the other side too.
It is worth noting that, so all of these courses are paid courses, right? You're going to pay, and obviously the 1 hour course is way cheaper than the 8 hour course. That's for a couple reasons, obviously, because I think people really do value what they pay for sometimes. Right. But it's also because these instructors aren't donating their time either. These instructors are professionals. They have a ton of expertise, and they're paid to do this. They're not paid if you buy a gun or not, but they are paid to provide the expertise and share that expertise that they have.
Powerful.
Very powerful. Obviously, owning a gun is very personal. And we've been really clear in this movement that we're not anti-gun, we're anti-gun violence, we're pro-gun safety. If you're comfortable, tell us each a little bit about whether or not you have firearms in your home, yourself personally, and how you arrived at that decision and why that makes sense for where you're at with your family and your life right now.
I can sort of kick us off, if that's okay. So I now live in semi-rural Colorado. I do have firearms in my home. However, where I live, who I live with, has changed what firearm ownership looks for me every single time. This is the first time in my life that I live by myself with no roommates. So my firearms are safely stored, locked. I don't have a family. I don't have kids. I live by myself. So that makes sense to me. I'm not going to speak for somebody, who lives in a very dangerous area and has other people to protect. If somebody walks through my front door, I'm walking out the back door. Like, it's not that serious. When I have people staying at my home who might be visiting, I take my firearms, I bring them to my partner's house with her permission, and I tell her, I'm going to store my firearms in the room that now I'm going to be sleeping in with you, locked, triple locked. There's a lock in the firearm and 2 locks on the case at a very high inconvenient place that's out of sight, out of mind. She knows this. And then whoever's staying at my house leaves, I stop staying at my partner's house, I bring my firearms back. That's what that looks like to me, because I don't want anybody to I don't want to give anybody a chance to access my firearms, walk away with the case, nothing. When I lived with roommates, I had a hefty safe. I had like a storage trunk that my firearms would be triple locked, then double locked, and then my ammo is that's a whole different situation. There's no such thing as an armed firearm in my home. It doesn't exist. And every time I have a different housing situation, even when I'm in a different state, whether I'm ground level apartment or second floor apartment, those are things I take into consideration. Colorado is an open carry state. You can open carry in most places within reason. I'm not going to walk into Denver. It's not permitted there. But when I'm hiking, when I'm camping, hiking, when I'm recreating in nature and I'm far away from people, me, as a brown queer woman, I will either conceal and carry or open carry because I take my safety seriously. I live in a part of Colorado where people go missing. There's mine shafts everywhere. We got cougars, bobcats. I will carry a firearm for my personal safety. When I'm hunting, I have my rifle and my handgun for my safety. If I'm going to Walmart, listen, let's be so serious. I'm leaving. I'm never going to be the hero. I'm leaving. My safety looks like removing myself from a situation. And I think those are some of the things that I take into consideration as a firearm owner is my situation changes with every different housing situation I have, with who I'm having around me, if there's going to be alcohol involved. And I think that is what makes me a safe firearm owner. I think that is what really matters is you can't not think about these kinds of things. And I can talk about these things with people who are considering being firearm owners so they can see what is it like. And I'm like, you have to think about these things. And so the fact that I'm able to have these conversations in good space, I'm like, I am a firearm owner. This is what it looks like for me. This is what it has looked like for me. Let's talk about it.
I, myself, am not a gun owner. I live in Hawaii. There aren't a ton of gun owners here, but there's still guns out there. Like she said, they are everywhere. It's just not popular here. And we also don't have terrestrial interstate borders, so people can't drive guns in like they do from Indiana to Chicago. So Hawaii, we benefit from that. But that doesn't mean I don't want to protect my family, right? I have 3 kids, and I want to protect my family against that unlikely event. So I have next to my bed, and this is not a joke. I truly have next to my bed a Louisville Slugger. I'll beat the crap out of somebody with that Louisville Slugger, but I don't want to take their life because they tried to steal my TV. Now here's why I feel that way. Because there was a time in my life 20 years ago when I went to combat. And the military trained me not only how to use firearms, but how to be prepared mentally, morally, physically, and emotionally to take a human life if necessary, right? And I went to Afghanistan with that preparation. I no longer occupy that space mentally, emotionally, morally, and probably not even physically because I don't go to the range enough, right? And so I don't occupy that space. I do not want to take a human life. I do not want to deal with the moral injury that I know comes with taking another human life. And it's hard enough when you're doing it in combat under the rules of operation against a person who's shooting at you. Mm-hmm. A good reason in Afghanistan to shoot at somebody is because they're shooting at you, right? We all understand that. A bad reason to shoot at somebody in your home is because they want your TV.
Right.
If they're in such a bad place that they need to come in and get your TV, let them have your TV.
Take it.
Again, protect your family. I'm going to use the Louisville Slugger. all that kind of stuff. And I hope more people can train smart will help them make that decision too. So maybe it's, do I buy a gun? Do I buy a dog? Do I buy a Louisville Slugger? And, do what's right for you. But I agree with Bianca that if you have those guns, they got to be locked. They got to be totally secure and separate from ammunition. And that's how we keep our kids safe, to be honest.
I just wanted to piggyback off Chris's piggyback. So I'm going to talk about my 9-to-5 for just a quick second. As I said before, I work for Hunters of Color. I work in a hook and bullet conservation organization, and I'm also one of the state ambassadors for Colorado. I talk about the fact that I have the potential to create so many new Black and brown and queer gun owners. I could convince people to buy guns on the regular. However, as somebody who works with incoming new experienced hunters, as somebody who teaches hunters ed for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, as somebody who is a hunter mentor for the state agency, people are always like, okay, I took my hunter ed. I'm ready to hunt with you in the fall. I'm going to go buy a gun. And I'm like, whoa there, let's pump the brakes. Do you have to buy a gun? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I have to go get an elk, get a deer, get something. And I was like, you are now in a room full of hunters. Do you not think we own firearms? And they're like, well, yeah, you have to, right? And I was like, I personally do. I have a rifle. I'm a big game hunter. And they're like, I have to get a rifle. And I was like, but if we go hunting, how many people are shooting at one time? 3 of us are not shooting at the same time. I am bringing one rifle as a mentor, as a hunter. I'm bringing one rifle and within a certain group of people, because that's one rifle to keep track of. That's one rifle to keep my eyes on. That's one rifle to use at a time. It's also a very expensive thing. I don't want you to say, hey, I've never hunted before. I don't know. I've never been a firearms enthusiast. I'm going to go make like a $600 to $1,200 purchase. Let's pump the brakes. Like, the goal is not to create new firearm owners. It's to create safe firearms users, safe firearm cultures, and that has nothing to do with how many guns are purchased at the end of the day.
Woo.
Yes.
Drops microphone. So that leads us into another question. How has it been working with veterans and hunters on creating Train Smart?
I get to work with veterans all the time on gun violence prevention stuff, and we live by this idea that veterans are respected for their service and then trusted for their opinions on guns, and so they're perfect spokespeople for the entire gun violence prevention movement. And we talked about training, safety, and accountability, right? These 3 pillars of military gun culture, and we base almost every talking point on training, safety, and accountability. I have yet to meet, over 8 years of throwing that language around, I've yet to meet a veteran who did not say, yeah, those are the 3 things I learned in boot camp or from my drill sergeant or whatever, or when I went to the range. The range NCO said, yeah, we're going to train a lot. You're always going to be safe. You're accountable for what you do. Sometimes that last one is the hardest one, right? We actually talk about this a lot, that there's also 4 fundamental gun safety rules, right? You always keep your gun pointed down range and don't aim at anything you don't intend to shoot. You treat every gun like it's loaded. Keep your finger off the trigger. Those are the first 3. And the 4th one is you make sure you know what your target is and what's behind it, right? I think a lot of people miss that one. That's the accountability part, right? Know what your target is and what's behind it. But advancing the work that I've been able to do with veterans around training, safety, and accountability to the actual practical application of gun safety training, it has been incredibly rewarding, and it's gotten our veterans excited too, right? So we have veterans who are already invested to say, yeah, I'll testify before a state legislature, or I'll write an op-ed, or I'll speak to a group of Moms Demand Action folks about what I know. But they have been begging me for as long as we've been doing this, like, when is Everytown going to enter the gun safety training category? When are they going to actually start providing the training? And we got there. Took us some time, but we got there, and that makes me so excited and also so humbled and proud that Everytown is able to and willing to work with veterans and to emulate that training, safety, and accountability that we have in the military. And so that means a lot to me too.
Yeah, so I've been in conservation my whole life. It's taken different forms. And now that I'm in hook and bullet type conservation, we will use firearms or bows and arrows as a method of take to get our animal. If you're entering the hunting space because you really want a gun or you're all about guns, I'm not feeling it. To me, conservation should fundamentally be about the fact that you care about conservation and you care about food sovereignty. You will be using tools to accomplish those goals, but I feel like that needs to also change within the hunting space. A $600 rifle for a new hunter is going to work just the same as a $2,000 rifle. It's whatever you are able to fill your freezer with that really matters, and how you're giving back to the land once that process is over. So, yeah. Hunting isn't about guns. We just happen to use them sometimes.
Yes.
Neither is the military. It's not about guns, right? It's
Right.
about service and defense. And yes, sometimes we use those tools. But yeah, it's a really good point.
Oh my gosh, this is the best moment with you all. And I would not let you leave without asking the question that we ask all of our guests on the podcast. And that is, how do you take care of yourself?
I have to answer this honestly. Otherwise, my girlfriend's going to write you a letter and be like, she's lying. I have a very type A personality. I like to stay busy. I'm overproductive. So I'm not great at self-care. I'm wrapping up a master's degree, so I'm hoping to be better at taking care of myself.
Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you. Thank you. I like learning. I like reading. I am a very big nerd. I have 2 snakes. I'm very into reptiles. I'm very into bugs and critters. And then I'm also a sports girly. I played rugby for a very long time, collegiate, post-collegiate. When I moved to Colorado, I started playing roller derby. But now that I'm done with
awesome.
my master's program, I think I want to play rugby again. But I will never turn down couch naps. If you're stressed, if you need a break, go lay on that couch and take a nap. That's my best way to take care of myself.
Naps. I love naps. My youngest still takes naps, and I use it as my nap time too. I'm not even going to lie to you, on the weekends.
I invited my sister over for a nap today. She has twins. I was like, come over to my house and take a couch nap.
I love that.
Man, I need to get more into naps. They sound fantastic. I only do it when I'm desperately in need. I think there's 2 ways I take care of myself. I love the work that I do. And the whole cliche about if you love what you do, you're not really working. That's part of what I do, but it still gets stressful. I really love national parks. In my midlife, I have learned that this is something I'm super passionate about. I have found that even like thinking and talking about national parks or planning a trip that I'm not even going to take actually de-stresses me and makes me feel really connected. It makes me feel happy. I live on an island, and there's not a formal national park on this island. We have Pearl Harbor, but that's a national memorial. So I don't have easy access. Like I think Bianca does, probably to a Rocky Mountain or something. Yeah, so I don't have that. I can't escape into a hiking trail here on the island I live on, but I also get the advantage of surfing. So it's another physical outdoor activity. I love surfing, and I don't get to do as much as I want to because of the kids, but I do think that when I can get out there, it is meditative, it is stress reducing. It's also social because you're out there with friends usually. And here's the thing I've said, surfing is my hobby. And I know that for some people, guns is their hobby, right? And I respect that. I also like to make the joke sometimes for these people that aren't the hunters, that aren't really using guns for sustenance or for that type of recreation, that they really just do it because it's their hobby. I've kind of made a point, like surfing is my hobby. Surfboards cost about as much as guns cost. They're very expensive. But surfboards aren't the leading cause of death for children in America.
Right.
Guns are. If surfboards were, I might rethink how many surfboards I bought, when and where I used them, and where I kept them. I would be a responsible surfer and, focus on making sure that everybody else is okay too. And so I think that whatever we do to de-stress, whatever we do for our hobbies, even if it's guns, even if it's shooting, however we, meditate, I think that it's always being thoughtful of other people. And that ultimately is, I think, what brings me back to sort of why I do what I do.
Yes.
Thank y'all for sharing that. It seems like even though, Bianca, you said you could do better, I'm pretty pleased with your response. So you get an A. And Chris, you definitely get an A. So y'all passed that test.
The stakes were high. I can't lie.
You couldn't tell a lie.
Nikita checks
I know
in.
if I lie about taking care of myself, my girlfriend's going to be like, she's lying. She's really bad.
Also, Nikita checks in. She'll check in and make sure in a couple months you're taking care of yourself. So we take that seriously on this podcast because we can't pour from an empty cup, right? And it sounds cliche, but it's so true. And sometimes we think that we've got to keep doing it all every single day, every single thing. And this is going to be a long fight. We've seen already how long this fight is. It's not over, right? One unintentional shooting is too many. One gun death is too many. One firearm suicide is too many. We have to keep going, but we can't keep going if we don't take care of ourselves. And
That's
so,
right.
Nikita, I'm going to pass it over to you to close us out with that final question.
Yeah, why don't y'all share any messages of encouragement for our amazing volunteer leaders?
I know a lot of your volunteer leaders. I've worked with them over many, many years. They are amazing people. They're in it for the right reasons. And I would say one of the things to always remember is how much this work requires and values inclusivity. And I think that includes being inclusive of veterans like me, and that includes being inclusive of gun owners like Bianka and hunters, because I think that the way we're going to truly achieve a nation that prioritizes gun safety is by all working together on it. There's a lot of gun owners, a lot of veterans, a lot of law enforcement, a lot of folks out there who want the exact same things that all the volunteers want, and just a nation and a world free from excessive gun violence. And by working together, I think we can get that done. And so, yeah, look into Train Smart and see if it makes sense for you and spread the word.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you,
What
Chris.
about you, Bianca?
Okay, I'm going to say two things to the volunteer leaders. The first is I recently attended a very large national firearm-centered conference. And two of the things that I experienced there are, one, everybody's focused on numbers, sales, increasing firearm owners. I don't think I heard a single conversation about switching the onus of gun safety on us as firearm owners. I don't think a single panel, a single presenter focused on the culture of firearm ownership. And then secondly, during a presentation, I don't know if you all know this, one of the largest, if not the largest growing demographic of firearm owners in the United States currently is Black women. It's in the numbers. And it was acknowledged several times that people from urban areas, BIPOC people, are increasingly becoming firearm owners. And during a presentation where this was acknowledged, somebody said, and I quote, "The demographics are working against us." And I don't think it was meant to be a dog whistle, but I want all of the volunteer leaders to know that the work that you are doing, the work that you are advocating for matters. And it works because those conversations are being had in interpersonal spaces. Firearm ownership, firearm legislation will always be controlled by people who are not majority firearm owners. And we owe it to ourselves to make sure that safe laws, bills, legislation is passed in a way that keeps us safe and accountable and keeps our communities safe. The second thing I'm going to tell our volunteer leaders is one thing I try to tell myself: go outside. Close your computer, put your phone on silent, touch some grass.
Yes.
Take time. I feel like we're very on all the time, very 100%.
Yes.
Turn everything off. Go forage for some berries safely. Pick a wild mushroom. Go fishing. Go do the thing that you were historically, genetically, physiologically designed to do. Put your foot in some grass. Go spend time with the whole reason you're here, and that is nature.
I love that.
Ooh, y'all just blew me away today.
Thank you both so much for this conversation. It's been amazing, and I'm so excited to learn more about Train Smart as it rolls out. And it's obviously a huge undertaking. So much work, so much heart, so much expertise, so much knowledge that you both brought into this space to be able to create this course. And Chris, you said something towards the beginning of our conversation that stuck with me. If we don't do it, who is? If we don't create this, who's going to? And so many of the folks in our movement are here because we believe if we're not going to be the ones to end gun violence in America, then who is, right? No one's coming to do this for us. And so I just have immense gratitude for both of you for your time and expertise that you've put into creating this program, seeing it through many years, months of development. And congratulations on this launch. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Y'all, this conversation with Chris and Bianca was fascinating. And I'm looking forward to seeing how Train Smart grows as well. We've seen the incredible progress Be Smart has made over the past 10 years when it comes to saving lives. And Train Smart is going to build on that legacy. It's really exciting.
Absolutely. And folks who are interested in learning more about the program can go to trainsmartgunsafety.org. Again, it's trainsmartgunsafety.org to learn about the courses, the other trainers in the program, and why we made this training. And thank you so much for listening to this podcast.
Send us your thoughts, feedback, and stories to movementbuilders@everytown.org. Again, it's movementbuilders at everytown.org.
And please keep sharing this with your fellow volunteer leaders and team members and tell us what topics you want to see us explore in future episodes of the podcast. Thanks for listening to Movement Builders. I'm Kaylin.
And I'm Nikita. Thanks for all you're doing to save lives. It's working.